Martin St. Louis is back with the Canadiens, and we're back with another show talking about the Habs and their impressive win over the Avalanche Tuesday night in Colorado. Welcome to the HIO show. Welcome to the HIO show. I'm Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, filling in as host for the rest of the season for Jessica Rusnak, who is away on maternity leave, awaiting the birth of her second child. We wish Jess all the best. I'm joined this week by former Canadiens Chris Nyland and Rick Green, who are teammates on that 1986 Stanley Cup team, and hockey analytics analyst Andrew Berkshire. Okay, so how would you guys assess the Canadiens' performance on their 5-game road trip that ended with the 2-2-1 record following Tuesday night's 2-1 win over the Avalanche? Chris, let's start with you.
500 on the road is good, but, this team, again, they're just below 500, but that's a good road record. One of the things I saw last night with them is that they limited the amount of shots. And, a lot of games, if you go back over this season, the course of the season, they've given up 37, 38, 40 shots. And it's just too many. It's too much. And it's a team that last night it seemed they were a little bit more committed to team defense and getting it done. 27 shots. That's okay. You can live with that, and I get grade A chances and all that stuff. But, I guess, was I surprised? No, they're right about where they should be. I just don't think this team is ready to make that jump just yet, but they've certainly shown some promise.
And I mean, really, once again, they've shown they can elevate their play against the top teams. I mean, they went at Edmonton, pretty good game. And then you see them respond again to Colorado. Second time they beat them this year. Is what a team that's just explosive with their speed, and they were able to contain them and discipline in their play. And you got to give them full marks. And of course, they were obviously excited that Martin St. Louis was back behind the bench, so they had a little more motivation in that fact. But you got to give them credit. They responded and they showed up, and that's somewhat of a bonus, even though it hasn't been a winning year. They're able to elevate their play against some of the top teams and have some success. So they can build on that. They can, believe that they're able to compete with these really good hockey teams, and give them a good game and find ways to win sometimes. So that's a pretty good road trip, a long one, but they were able to show some positive signs, which is what they want to continue to build on.
Yeah, you can tell that just based on the flow of play, losing Joshua Waugh, it's much tougher to them it's like an uphill climb with just that top line being the one that like clicks and pushes things forward. But the gutsiness is impressive. It really looked like they wanted to win that for Marty coming back to the bench against Colorado. The 2 games before that, I kind of felt bad for Trevor Letowski because you're coming in, Waugh gets injured, Marty's gone. You've got less tools to get a better result. And you face 2 pretty tough teams in Seattle and Vancouver. And, luckily, Primo put on a phenomenal performance to get Letowski his first win. But overall, the road trip, I'm impressed. I think that this team is ahead of schedule based on where I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. It's the same players usually that we see stepping up. You can see what the core looks like going into next season. Now they've got David Reinbacher in Laval. That's exciting to watch for the rest of the season as well. So there's good stories, at least, for this last stretch of the season. And the team is playing hard hockey. So that's something to hang your hat on, even in a losing season.
Yeah, the way that game started, it looked like Colorado was going to blow them out. The mismatch in depth of talent is up. Just look at on paper, you see it. But to me, the most impressive thing about this Canadiens team all season has just been the compete level. And I think they get that from their coach. I mean, Marty St. Louis' compete level was top notch for, a guy who was never drafted, went on to have a Hall of Fame career. And also Slavkovsky, he's getting better the later this season goes, which is really interesting considering he'd never played more than 39 games in a season before, which was last season before the knee injury. So there's a lot of, I think, a lot of hope going forward. Once they bring in more talent, if they can keep that compete level, I think there's good things in the future for this team. But it does seem like they raise their level of play. They really do against good teams. Rick, you touched on it a little bit earlier. How do you explain that as a former player?
Well, there's a motivation in that. Excuse me. Obviously, you don't want to get embarrassed by, a really highly skilled hockey club. And if you have any pride at all, as a professional athlete, you want to show well. And it's a challenge to play against some of the top players. And it's a testament to the type of character that they have in these guys, that they respond in that way. And I have to tell you, watching Colorado play, what a quick hockey club that is. Those guys can really fly out there, and they have a transition game that I haven't seen in a while. And you can see why they were undefeated in 9 games, because they're just on a roll. But Canadiens responded in a way that they said, no, it's not happening tonight. We're going to dig deep, and we're going to put our best game out there. And they did, and found a way to win.
Knuckles?
Yeah, they got an awesome club, Colorado, and to see them step it up like they did. And again, Rick's right. You don't want to get embarrassed, and you kind of put the pedal to the metal as a player. And collectively, if the guys grasp that and want to do that, they're going to play a better game. And it's sometimes, 82 games, it gets ho-hum sometimes during the season. It's easy to go there. I'm interested to see what they do coming home against Philadelphia, because that first game home, and they've had a long road trip, you tend to relax a little bit. Okay, we're home, we got this, and then you get smoked. So, but what they did in Colorado against a team that's certainly a contender, but I'll be more impressed to see what they do against Philly here tomorrow night.
It's always nice to watch Nathan MacKinnon too. I think it's Pete Blackburn says that he skates like he's angry at the ice. He's got like this force around him that seems so unique, but impressed with the Canadiens. I thought it was a bit surprising to see Nick Suzuki continue to score. The fact that Suzuki is going to hit a 30-goal season before Cole Caulfield is a surprise to, I would assume, everyone. Yeah. But as you mentioned, the grind, Chris, of an 82-game season, that has to be a lot tougher when you're on a bad team as well. Like an 82-game season is already a grind. But when you've got nothing to play for at the end of the day, outside of personal pride, it must be tougher to get going 82 times.
And that is the thing. The Kings really do have nothing to play for. Losses help them more than wins as far as the draft going forward. But again, it's just that compete level. This team, they don't give up. And, you mentioned Nathan MacKinnon. Man, what a treat that guy is to watch. And, when he scored that goal early in the game, as I mentioned earlier, I thought, okay, the Kings are going to get blown out here. But Sam Montembeault showing yet again that he's a number one goalie, a legit number one goalie in the NHL, right? You want your number one goalie to give you a chance to win. And he does it night after night. There's very few games this season he hasn't. Last night was another case of him giving his team a chance to win, and they did. And, of course, one of the guys he was able to stop last night was Jonathan Drouin. He's got 14 goals, 32 assists, 46 points with Colorado, which would put him 4th on the Canadiens in scoring behind Suzuki, Caulfield, and Matheson. He's only got 7 points less than he had in his best season with Montreal, with still 13 games left to go. Andrew, you surprised?
No, I think I'm not surprised that Drouin is scoring points. He's always been able to put points on the board. Goals his last few seasons in Montreal was a huge issue. His finishing just wasn't there. So it's nice to see him rebound in Colorado. What I've been surprised by is how many minutes he's been playing and how healthy he's been. Because those last several seasons in Montreal, it was like a grind. Every time he would start to get a little bit of momentum, he would get hurt again. And I believe this is the most games he's played in a season since 2019, like 2018, 2019 with Canadiens. So a big comeback season for him. He's with his best bud there, Nathan MacKinnon in Colorado. He gets to ride shotgun with him on power plays, and he's been a contributor. He's been surprisingly good in terms of like his overall game this year. So it's a great story for Jonathan Drouin. I'm more surprised at everything but the scoring, Like the scoring I expected, but everything else I've been impressed by him.
Well, he was a healthy scratch earlier in the season also by his coach, and turned it around to his coach saying the game before the game as a Canadiens he was the best player on the ice. Knuckles, are you surprised to see what Drouin's been able to do?
No, the kid's talented, but again, he's a complimentary player. You look at Greeny could play with friggin' Rantanen and McKinnon and have them kind of numbers. Sometimes you touch the puck and it goes to one of those two and you end up getting assist and you didn't do okay? So I'm not trying to take away from his comeback season, but he is a complimentary player. As opposed to when he was here, he was looked at as the guy. He had to, and the pressure was too much for him, quite frankly. And I remember when he first came to Montreal and they asked him, well, how are you going to deal with the pressure, the media and all? Oh, that won't be a problem. Well, it was a problem, a big problem for him. So you have to be and I'm not just talking about myself or Greeny. To play here for any length of time in this city, you have to be a special person. You have to be able to take a lot of crap. You're always under the microscope. Same in Toronto. Guys who play there any length of time, man, you got to be able to deal with a lot. And he's in a place now out west, perfect for him. He's away. He's with his boy McKinnon. And like I said, any could get points playing with those two.
Hey, listen, you got to give the guy credit. I mean, I'm a little surprised that he's having the success that he's having, but I'm happy for him. I mean, he dealt with some issues, some health issues, and injuries were a big part of his struggle. And then, of course, as Nick said, playing in this environment as a French Canadian is tough. And when you start struggling, there's a lot of people that are on your back and starting to put a lot of extra pressure on. And he's a kind of kid that I don't think could handle that, obviously, very well. And getting to Colorado and playing on a pretty good line, given the opportunity to play with the guys that he has, he's responded. So I got to give him credit. He's kind of put some bad things behind him, and he's carrying on with his career. And bottom line of all this, he seems to be healthy mentally and being able to carry on with life in the NHL, which is.
Let me add this one thing. I am happy for him. I am. Yeah. I'm happy for the kid. There's no question. Yeah. I mean, he had a horrendous time here. It was tough on him, no question. Some guys got out for it, some aren't.
Being around the locker room when Drouin was here and talked with him, really good guy. And yeah, you're right. The pressure, not everybody's built to handle the pressure here. And especially when you're a French Canadian, the spotlight's even more so. And I remember after he joined the Canadiens asking his agent, Alan Walsh, what advice do you have for him to handle it? And he said, well, have fun with it. But it might have been a bit of fun at first. There are a lot of injuries also that Drouin had to deal with. It didn't help. But, at the end of last season, he said he loved his time in Montreal. But it wasn't fun for him. I mean, that the mental issues he went through and not being able to sleep and missing that entire playoff run. But happy to see him. And the other thing on that, talking about Slafkovsky earlier, what's impressed me more than even the on-ice performance by Slafkovsky is how he's been able to handle everything off the ice. I mean, he's 19 years old. He's turning 20 soon. I mean, the spotlight, not only in Montreal, but in his home country, he's a hero there. And the way he's been able to handle it and he's built to handle it. And the Canadiens, when they drafted him, that's one of the reasons they said they drafted him is because they felt he had the personality to handle playing in Montreal. Knuckles, for you, what was the hardest part off the ice playing in Montreal?
Trying to stay out of Thursdays and Winnies. No.
That's back when you guys could actually go there because everybody didn't have a camera in their pocket, right?
Honest to God, like for me, I could have got caught with nuclear waste, nuclear material, and I would have got a pass. Being able to deal with the scrutiny all the time of did you play well? Did you win that fight? And the French and English media and all the that goes on with it. It just, again, it's a lot of like under the microscope all the time. And it can be tough. And in Drouin's case, again, being that French Canadian kid, it's difficult. And looking at Slafkovsky now, you brought him up. I just went to a luncheon a couple of weeks ago with Jeff Gorton and Hughes, and a bunch of box holders, people who had suites, and they had a luncheon, and they got to question these guys. And, you know, they talked about Slafkovsky and liking where he's at right now. But they said when they draft, someone talked about drafting play, and they wanted to draft character guys who have character, guys they feel can play in this environment. And that kid is so suited for this environment. If you talk to him, and I've spent some time with him, I got to speak with him, you can tell he can handle it. I mean, he'd been away from home since he was like 14, living on his own. And he just really, for his age, a very mature kid in a lot of ways. And then a lot of ways he wasn't. And we're starting to see him grow now. And I love what I'm seeing from him. And the character is one of the big things.
Well, I know, Knuckles, you got a bit of a rough welcome to Montreal, too, because I think the late, great Red Fisher didn't thought that you didn't belong. I know you and Red became great friends later, but at first he didn't think you had a spot on that team, right?
Yeah, he said the Canadiens don't need a guy like Chris Nyland. I was so naive. I didn't know. I thought I was going to get – I thought I was out of town, you know, because he wrote that article. I was, like, devastated. You know, a young kid, I'm in there, and I'm there, you know what? And then – Rocket Rashad was writing, I think the Star was still around. There was another paper. And Rocket wrote an article saying the Canadiens do need a guy like Rocket Nyland. Coming from Rocket Rashad, it was unbelievable. And that kind of put a Band-Aid on my wound and got me through those first couple years where I was just starting to understand all that stuff. I didn't know what the hell was going on, and it certainly helped me grow in a lot of ways.
Now you and Red became friends after that, though,
yeah,
right, Knuckles?
Yeah, very good friends.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it's a name that Nux probably remembers very well. Not a French Canadian that had a hard time playing in this environment was Perry Turnbull. Yeah. And you know, him being brought in, I used to watch him. What a nervous wreck. I mean, he would go through 5 pairs of skates, I think, in the course of a game because he was just like so out of it and had a hard time dealing with everything that came with the media and the coverage, you know. So basically, you know, couldn't play here. But, you know, one thing remains the same. You talk about my experience in the situation coming in was I always took it as a motivating thing to be in Montreal because if you didn't want to read and be criticized, just do your job. And, you know, unlike somewhat of the vast majority of the athletes, nobody wants to get, you know, criticized. And if you criticize them, they think it's unfair. But I always believe that if you don't want to be criticized, just make sure you respond in doing a good job and doing an honest day's work, and you won't have to worry about
the fan base, right, Rick? The fan base really helped to hold the team accountable too, because the fan base was tough on you. You know, like, you know, you didn't win games, man, or you were playing bad. They let you know it, and that sucks sitting there when everybody's booing you. It does as a team. You know, I remember times the power play wasn't clicking, and you could hear the boos, and then, you know, you're losing a game at home and you're down 3-1 and there's a minute left in the game and they're booing the out of you. And nobody likes that. You take it to heart. And I think that's one of the good things about playing here also is the expectations of the fans was such that they didn't accept the losing. Now, has that changed somewhat? I think it has. But hopefully it's going to swing back the other way pretty soon.
Well, I know it was Red who first hired me at the Gazette, and Drill is a mentor along with Mike Farber, and he drilled into me, criticize but be fair. And, you know, I've always tried to follow that. I know, Rick, I remember you telling me a story once about Red talking to you and saying you weren't playing that well, and if it didn't change, he was going to write about it. Do you remember?
Exactly. And I mean, as a player, the last thing you want to, you know, see happening is you make headlines for the wrong reasons. And like I said, you use that to motivate yourself so that. And of course, back then we didn't have the same type of numbers of people writing and, you know, talking about the team as they have today. But one thing remains the same is they're there to do a job, and as a player, you have to do your part, or you have to face the music, and that's life. And either you use it and make it work for you, or fall behind. And it's will always be a different world here in Montreal, but all in a good way, because I really believe that it forces the athlete here to be better than average. And if you can't deal with that, then move on.
Changing topics here a bit, we mentioned off the top of the show Martin St. Louis returning. So happy to hear his young son, who had been injured in a hockey game and then was hospitalized after, which is why Martin left the team. So happy to hear everything's good. His son's back home, recovering at home. But that meant Trevor Letowski had to take over as head coach. Last time he had been a head coach was in the Ontario Hockey League about 4 years ago. So, Andrew, what do you think about what he was able to do during his brief tenure as head coach?
I thought he was good. I thought there was nothing that stood out to me as him being, out to lunch or like not prepared for it. It seemed like the team was ready to play for him. It was, a short time. So, you're not going in changing a bunch of stuff on Marty in a couple of games there. But I thought that he ran the bench pretty well. Everything seemed to make sense. Good for Trevor Letowski. Another thing to pat onto his resume.
I know, Rick, when you were assistant coach, I don't think you ever got thrown into the fire as the head coach, but can you imagine what that would have felt like when you were assistant under Claude Julien?
Yeah, of course, you feel that added pressure that everybody is, watching to see how you handle yourself. And, Trevor, got into a situation where, yes, there are a lot of things that have been in place at this stage of the season, but he handled himself well. He seemed to be confident. And, as a head coach, you basically dictate who gets on the ice when and how much they're given. And, I think that overall that the guys also understand that he's going into a situation which is somewhat new to him. And the players rally behind that, knowing that they have to do their part in helping the coach until the real head coach comes back. So compliments to him and the group. They they didn't seem out of place, and not an easy transition for a lot of guys, because a lot of people do a lot of watching and analyzing to see what kind of job is done. But well done.
Yeah, Knuckles, I know you were an assistant coach in New Jersey, a head coach in the ECHL. What Can you imagine what that would have been like, being behind the bench of the Montreal Canadiens?
Yeah. Listen, I think certainly he's a guy that's prepared. He probably does a lot of the game planning before with Marty, so he's used to that. Maybe not so much. You get behind the benches, have to stop pulling the strings and making the chess moves and all that. But and I'm not gonna. Don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think it's as complicated as people think when you're around it all the time. He's around it all the time. He sees what Marty does. He has his own philosophy on what to do there, and I'm sure it was pretty easy for him to make the transition. And he did well. Again, 500 on the road. Hello, and with this team, who's really not ready to make that jump. I liken it to, you look back, Luke Richardson, remember he took over, and how this team kind of rallied around that guy when he came. So I think we saw some of that in this situation for sure. Two different coaches, and Letowski, a nice guy. He's just a good guy. He's a good hockey guy, and I think the guys played for him. They respect him.
I think the most difficult part for him might have been dealing with the media.
I was wondering how he dealt with the French media. Did they give it to him?
No, they didn't seem to so much. And then they brought Alex Burrows out to do one of the days to do the interviews in French. But it seemed to go okay. And when you watch the games, Letowski's the guy standing right beside Marty, right?
Yeah.
The other guy, Burrows, is in charge of the forwards, and Roby doesn't.
Because I remember Cunningworth, right?
Well, yeah,
that he went through. You know what I mean? I'm glad that didn't happen. But God, did they abuse that poor kid?
Yeah, I remember when Kirk Muller took over from Julien in the bubble playoffs, and the Canadiens felt they had to apologize for the fact Kirk couldn't speak French at the time when he was the obvious candidate to come in. But coaching the Montreal Canadiens, there's not many jobs that come with more pressure than that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some rapid fire questions here. First off, as the Canadiens move forward in this rebuild. Do you think they're going to go free agent shopping this summer, Andrew?
I think free agent shopping is for next summer. I expect this year to be a trade. I think Hughes likes that draft day move, or like around the draft move, adding a top 6 forward. Kirby Dach 2 years ago, Alex Newhook last year, and both have worked out pretty nice, So I know Doc's been injured a lot, but in terms of when he's on the ice, he looks great, right? So I expect that to be the move this summer. And then next year, when the cap goes up again, a couple more contracts fall off, and there's some big fish available, that's when it makes sense to me to go free agent shopping.
Knuckles?
I think they're out of it for this summer. I think there's still a summer away. They're gonna want to add, and they need to add some men to this team. No question about it. Men that can play, men that can be standing at the end of a long playoff series. So I don't think they're there yet. I think certainly next year is going to be a pivotal year for this team coming up. And like Andrew said, I believe that there could be a trade if they can get a guy like Kirby Dach coming back. Is going to be a big shot in the arm for this team if provided he stays healthy next year. And hopefully they bring in somebody else and maybe solidify that middle as much as they can, going into the following season, so they're able to really make a run and do something with this core group.
I'm thinking Kent Hughes will look at the free agency option. Again, it comes down to how much they're going to take to sign some of these guys. Look at Monahan. You take a chance on a guy that wanted to be part of the Canadiens. That's been healthy so far. At this time of the year, and then you got other guys, Marchessault, another kid that's up for a new contract, and there's a few names. Gunsel is another one there that's looking for a new contract. So it comes down to where it fits into the dollars and cents in their on their hockey club, and prioritizing which guys they foresee as being part of the organization long term, and then maybe look at some possibilities of filling in some possible free agents that fit their salary structure.
Yeah, Marchessault is an interesting name, especially on a team that needs help offensively at the forward position so bad. He's maybe a minor free agent signing. I think what I'm interested in is how big of a trade. There's going to be a trade. I'm sure he's going to be like a Kirby Dach trade, Alex Newhook type trade. But I wonder if Kent Hughes does something bigger, like rather than one first-round pick, if he makes some kind of a big trade. I think that's more likely to happen moving forward. The other question going into next season, do you think Logan Mailloux and or David Reinbacher has a chance to start next season with the Canadiens? Let's go to the former defenseman, Rick.
Look at these. From what I understand, they're obviously doing a great job, and the opportunity is there, and now it's a matter of seeing what they can do at the NHL level. And as I think it's fair to say, you got to give these guys a chance to show their stuff, and if they handle themselves in a way that they can do the job, then you give them the opportunity. But one thing remains the same back there. They got so many guys there on the blue line that something is going to happen in the numbers game, and the sooner they can establish what guys are all about their future, and these guys definitely seen in Reinbacher and Mailloux as two guys that are going to be key moving forward, then the other guys down the list are going to have to maybe be moved, packaged, or do something, because it's impossible to keep that many guys on your blue line. And that's a good position to be in, dealing from the numbers and quality guys that they do have. But time will tell when these guys are able to respond to the opportunity to play at the NHL level. And if they do it, then somebody in the pecking order is going to have to be moved out.
Knuckles?
I've been kind of cautious with Mailloux's projection just because his development has been rocky, through the things that he's caused, his injuries. and also COVID robbing him of a lot of his junior career. But this has been such an incredible development year for him in the American Hockey League. He's third among all defensemen in scoring in the American Hockey League. And I thought, a few months ago, you need another year in the AHL this season. But now if he has a good training camp next season, after the year that he had in the American Hockey League, I feel like as an organization, you kind of have to give him a chance to prove that he's not ready, or prove that he is ready at the beginning of the year. So I could see him getting that shot. I would be a little bit more cautious with Reinbacher just because he's a little bit younger. He won't get to play that much pro hockey this year in Laval, even if they do make the playoffs. It's just a short amount of games, right? But I think Mailloux deserves a shot at the beginning of next year to prove that he's ready or prove that he's not ready. It'll be up to him.
Yeah, I like what Mailloux's done this year, no question. Like Andrew said, third in scoring, the defensive in the league. He's third in the team in scoring. He's a hard-nosed kid, too. He's not a pushover. Reinbacher, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a whole lot about him. I've seen him on tape and stuff like that, but he looks like a pretty talented kid. And I would say, they're going to get some exhibition games, and they're going to see how that goes. Maybe because of what Mailloux's done this season, and if he has a good camp next year, he could start the season here. I think it would be probably best for Reinbacher to spend more time in Laval at the beginning of the season and see how he develops playing in the small rink consistently, night after night, the travel, see how he adjusts to all that before you throw him into the fire. And I think that's the approach. A cautious approach with him at the start would be something, because last thing you want is this crowd. Oh, excuse me. This crowd getting on that player. It's defensemen. It's tough to make it in this league, period. And it's even tougher on D-men when you talk about the speed of the game and all they have to do now. And there's no more hooking and holding. You got to really be on your toes. I think he has to adjust to all that, and it's going to take him a little bit of time. But again, he's a talented kid, and he will. I'm sure he'll do fine, but he needs some time, I think, in Laval.
Yeah, that's where we talk about the possibility of trades with Kent Hughes leading up to the draft. They have so many young defensemen, Rick, as you were mentioning. They got to open up some spots. You wonder if they combine the first-round pick with one or two of their young defense prospects and maybe go after a Trevor Zegras type guy in a trade.
Oh, no. Zegras? Are you kidding me?
I'm talking a young, talented
Zegras. You want to win. You don't want oh, my God.
A young, talented. They need offense.
Give your head a shake.
Let me rephrase it then for you, Knuckles. If they package a couple of young defense in the first round pick for a young, offensively gifted forward, which is something they really need. Or maybe
a twinkle toes. We don't need a twinkle toes. We don't need guys tiptoeing through the tulips.
You mean something like a Peter Klimanex?
Yeah. Oh.
Well,
through the tulips with me. No, thank you.
I think they give Logan Mailloux every opportunity to make the team. I think if Laval wasn't in the playoff run, we might have already seen him up here for a game or two to see what he can do. But for Reinbacher, I think a season in the AHL, we've seen what it's done for Logan Mailloux. I think a season in the AHL makes sense for David Reinbacher. Another top prospect the Canadiens have is goalie Jacob Fowler. 29-5-1 record this season at Boston College, 2.19 goals against average, .925 save percentage. Finalist for the Mike Richter Award as a top goalie in NCAA college, something Caden Primo won when he was in university. Do you think he's ready to make the move to the Laval Rocket next season? Knuckles, I'll go back to you.
Listen, he could listen, you go from college to Laval. Listen, it's certainly an adjustment, the number of games and all that. You're against the pros now consistently. I think he could. He's a talented kid. There's certainly a lot of promise in that kid looking forward. I think some time, certainly in really good time, playing in Laval would be good for that kid. Is he ready to leave school? Who knows? I don't think, honestly, I think Primo would have benefited by staying in school a lot longer than he did, or at least finishing his years at Northeastern. So I wouldn't want to see the kid jump too soon, but if he does, Laval's a good spot for him.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, Chris. I think that they need to learn from the way that the Primo situation was handled. And one great NCAA year is great. It's a great development year for Jacob Fowler. Great feather in his cap. Now have two, and then you're more confident. You know that it's not a fluke. And, I think Jacob Fowler has got confidence oozing out of every pore on his body just by watching him play. Some of the saves that he makes is incredible. His attitude seems really, really great. He's got a big chip on his shoulder as well. But it doesn't hurt to stay in college a little bit, right? It'll help you out.
I mean, his statistics kind of speak for itself. Obviously a talented guy at that level, but like any of these young kids, you got to put them in the environment and see how they respond. And a goalie, as we all know, is the toughest position on the team, and those numbers and those save percentages, et cetera, are all fine and dandy. But let's get down to the bottom line here of putting them in an environment where you've got pros coming at you, and the level of play is much greater, and see how you respond, and then get a reading from that standpoint, and then you can decide which direction you want to go with this. But obviously, the potential is there to be a really good goalie. Now it's time for trial and error, if you will. Put him in an environment, see how he handles himself, and see what he does. That's the big deciding factor.
Well, Primo spent 2 years at Northeastern, and his university coach, told me earlier this season that he thought he should have stayed another year. The thing with Fowler also, I mean, as you mentioned, is his confidence is oozing out of him. And you wonder if Boston College goes and wins the NCAA championship and he wins the Mike Richter Award, is it worth going back for another season? And Primo's got one more year left on his contract. If you put Fowler in Laval for 1 year, then you decide after that. There's a lot of tough decisions for the Canadiens to make. That's why Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton get paid the big bucks. Anyway, that's it for this week's HIO show. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out YouTube channel. Go to MontrealGazette.com/newsletters to sign up for the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. And of course, go to HockeyInsideOut.com every day for all the latest Canadiens news. See you next week.